Hey guys, welcome back. So as many of you know, I'm currently in grad school. And it's around the time of the year when a lot of people are considering whether to go to grad school. Applications will be due at the end of the year. And also thinking about where should I go to grad school, what program. It can be really overwhelming. So I want to take this video, be really brief, and just describe how I decided where to go to grad school. And there's going to be no fluff, so let's just go right over to the whiteboard and I'll show you how I made my decision. So to get just right into it, I was deciding in the end between three programs. So the first was UCLA, which is the University of California at Los Angeles, where I got my undergraduate degree. The Master's in Statistics. In Berkeley, same thing, Master's in Statistics. And the last one was Harvard's Master's in Data Science. Now, looking at these names, you might think this one looks the most flashy or the most marketable. And on some levels, maybe you'd be correct, but at the same time, whenever you see something that says data science in the title of your master's or PhD program, I want you to raise a little bit of red flags. Because what it ends up being is more of a marketing tool to suck people into the program a lot of times. I'm not saying it's always like this, but if you look under the hood and look at exactly what they're going to be teaching you, a lot of times it's just a combination of classes from stats, the CS department, the math department, instead of actually a whole new program. So really, if you ever get into or are considering a program that literally has data science in the title, I want you to be a little bit suspicious and think about whether this is actually a real thing or if it's just a marketing tool to suck you in. So that said, there was three major criteria that I was looking at when deciding where to go to grad school. So just for frame of reference, at this point I had been working for 2 years as a software engineer after graduating from UCLA, and I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to get out of a graduate program. So the first one was duration. So how long is this program going to take me? Now, this was important to me for two reasons. One, I didn't want it to be too long, because having worked for a few years, I truly did understand that a full-time salary can be a very important thing. And when you go to grad school, if you go for 1 or 2 or 3 years, every year that you're in grad school is a year you're missing out on your full-time salary. So I didn't want to be in school for too long. But there's also the opposite side of the coin, which is that I didn't want to be in school for too short, because I wanted the experience to be worth it. I wanted to actually learn the things that I came here to learn based on the gaps that I found when I was working for a couple years. So looking at the durations, UCLA was very flexible between 1.5 to 2 years, kind of based on how fast you can get the requirements out of the way. Berkeley was a pretty set 1 year, 2 semester kind of deal. And Harvard was also a pretty set 1.5 year or 3 semester kind of deal. Now, the second thing that I was looking at is the flexibility of the coursework. So as I said before, after working for a few years, I knew exactly, or kind of more or less exactly, what I wanted to learn. So it was important for me to, yes, I'll take some required courses that you want me to take, but at the same time, there are certain things I came here to learn, and I don't want the requirements of my curriculum to get in the way of that. So looking at the flexibility of curriculum was number 2 for me. When I looked at the UCLA, it was very, very highly flexible. In fact, none of the courses were actually required. There was a lot of highly recommended courses, but there was a lot of flexibility in exactly what you do take. Berkeley was probably the most unflexible of all of the programs I was looking at, and part of that comes from the fact that it was just 1 year or 2 semesters, so that all the courses were required in these 2 semesters, and I think there was just one elective where I could actually choose what I wanted to do with that. Harvard was somewhere in the middle. It was pretty moderately flexible coursework, so because it was a little bit longer, there were required courses, but there was also some leeway in what I would like to take. And this brings us to number 3, which is actually the most important consideration that I thought about when going to grad school, and that is cost of education. So as important as the duration and as the flexibility of coursework are, at the end of the day, I was going to get my master's, as a lot of people do, versus a PhD, because I wanted to increase my earnings potential going forward. So I wanted to make sure that whatever I was paying up front for the program would eventually be worth it. So let's look at a couple things. Let's first look at the base price tag of these 3 programs, which are going to be very different. And then we'll look at what the final price tag would have been after we take into account TA-ships, which is teaching assistant, internships, and stuff like that. So starting with UCLA's program. UCLA's program had a full price tag of $35,000, so $35K. Berkeley's program had a full price tag of $40,000, $40K, and Harvard's program, as you might expect, had a very, very hefty price tag of $84,000 for the full program. So something you already see is that there's a big disparity in how expensive these 2 programs were going to be for me in total. So UCLA's was around 35, Berkeley's was in that same ballpark, around 40, and Harvard's was just way out there, 84,000. So a lot of people might be screaming and saying, yeah, but it's a Harvard education, it's worth it, you gotta go. But you're going to see the considerations that I'm going to make and see that actually it may not have been worth it in the long run. So before even going forward in this video, there's a point that I really want to hit home if you take nothing else away from this video, and it's in the way that we view education. So I think education gets portrayed as this really great engine for social mobility, especially if you're the first person in your family to go to college. And yes, that is a huge deal, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I think there are cases, and when you're getting your master's or your PhD, this is one of them, where it helps to think of education as just another product that you're purchasing in the economy. So it feels weird to even say that, because education is supposed to be more than that. But at the end of the day, education is a product, and as you can see, there's many different price tags that come with this same product. And you need to decide if that price tag is worth it based on your current situation. So now I wanted to get the true cost of this education, because just because that's the price tag doesn't mean I can't whittle it down through actions I do while I'm in grad school. And one of the biggest ways that students pay off their tuition is through TA-ships. So for those of you who maybe know it by different names, teaching assistant jobs, maybe sometimes graduate student instructors, basically just grad students who are helping teach undergrad courses in exchange for some or all of their tuition covered. So I asked around a lot, I did a lot of research, and it turned out that UCLA was going to be very generous in offering me teaching assistant positions as a master's student. Berkeley was very unlikely, basically saying that maybe, but since it's only a 2-semester program, it's not very likely that it's going to happen. And Harvard was even less likely. So I went to their orientation and I asked if there's a chance I could do a TA-ship. And while maybe 1 or 2 students in the program had been doing them, there was a pretty resounding answer of no. Which means that the Harvard price tag wasn't going to go down by a lot. So after doing my calculations, I said it's going to go down by about $5,000, taking into account just like a summer internship that I might have, keeping it on the conservative side. So the final cost that I would have to pay is $79K at Harvard. Now, Berkeley, there was no chance for a TA-ship, and it was a 1-year program, so there wasn't even a summer internship between any of this. So the price tag was pretty set at $40,000. UCLA was the most interesting story. So you see this price tag of $35K, which is moderately expensive, I would say. But because they were basically saying that TA-ships are very likely, you're probably going to get them, and the way TA-ships are structured, at least at UCLA, is that they refund you the tuition for the quarter you're TAing, and they pay you a couple $1,000s a quarter on top of that. So after taking into account that maybe I'll TA half the time I'm in grad school at UCLA and taking into account a summer internship, I actually got this $35,000 down to -$5,000. What does -$5,000 mean? That means that actually while I'm in grad school, I will be making $5,000 when you take into account the fact that I'm reducing tuition on certain quarters and making more money on top of that and internship and stuff like that. So while it's not a full-time salary by any means, it means that I'm actually not going to be paying anything for grad school if I go to UCLA. I'm actually going to be getting paid a little bit of money. So those were the considerations I was taking into account. Now, at this point, I was ready to rule one school out completely, not even consider it at all. And that school was Berkeley. So with the fact that I wasn't going to be getting much assistance with this tuition in terms of teaching, with the fact that it was only a 1-year program where I didn't have any real control over my coursework, I was very much ready to say that this is not the school for me. So Berkeley was ruled out. So that leaves UCLA and Harvard. And it really came down to a matter of money, because these other parameters, the length of the program and the flexibility of the coursework, I thought were pretty equal in my mind. There was no clear winner. So it really came down to which one am I willing to pay for. And if you look at just cost itself, it seems like UCLA is the right deal. But of course, Harvard does bring with it a certain name, and that may increase my future earnings by a certain amount. That's what was going on in my head. So I actually sat down. I set some sort of realistic parameters about how much more I could expect to earn after graduating from Harvard versus UCLA. So the key metric that I wanted to get at was, what was the time it was going to take? How many years would it take after graduating from these programs in order for me to see my return on my investment? And the way I calculate that is basically first take into account how much am I paying for this investment. In the case of Harvard, for example, I'm giving you $79,000 up front. But there's another hidden cost, which is how much full-time salary would I have made if I didn't go into the program at all. So this is called sometimes an opportunity cost. But you have to take that into account, right? Because if you didn't go to the program, you'd probably be working for this 1.5 years, and you have to add that lost salary to the literal cost you're paying for that program. And you need to see how many years it takes until this investment is worth it. And so I actually sat down and came up with these graphs. So as you can see, they both break even at around 20 years. And before even going on, there's kind of a hidden message here too. It's going to take 20 years, somewhere in that ballpark, for me to see my return on investment for these master's programs. For a lot of people who are in this area, the stats, data science-y area, that's not worth it. And I completely get that. That's something that was going through my mind too when I was deciding whether to go to grad school at all. Do you want to be going to get an investment that's going to take over 20 years to potentially pay off? And a lot of people are like, no, I'm just going to keep working. I'm going to keep getting experience. I'm going to keep getting my salary, and I'll just go into my career that way. Kudos to you. Honestly, I think that's a great idea as well. For me, personally, it was worth it, so I went ahead and went to grad school. So having considered all of that, I eventually decided that I'm going to go to UCLA, go Bruins, and that's where I've been for the last year. And I'm very, very happy with the decision I've made. There were small other perks as well. I'd gone there as an undergrad, so I kind of understood the system. Obviously, you can't beat this California weather compared to the East Coast. And also I got to TA, or be a teaching assistant, for a whole year now, which has just been, of course, it's been paying off my tuition, but it's also been an extremely rewarding experience to teach Python to undergraduates. And that's something I would not have had the chance to do probably if I went to Harvard instead. So that's it, guys. That's how I made my decision about a year and a half ago about where to go to grad school. And the key takeaway is not the decision I made. That is completely based on my circumstances, my life experiences, and yours are going to be different. So your decision might be different as well. So I think if you take away one thing from this video, it's to treat education as a product in the economy, just like anything else. And of course, this product is going to be priced differently in different places, different brands. But I want you to really sit down and think about, is this product I'm about to buy for this much money worth it in terms of how fast I'm going to return my investment? Because I think, at least for master's programs, that is the key consideration. And if your answer is no after doing that analysis, then I think you have your answer. So if you guys have any questions about this video or any ideas for future videos that you would like to see, please put them in the comments below. Also, please like and subscribe for more videos just like this, and I'll see you next time.